$15,000, baby, all from 1 month of focus and strategic data-driven sports betting. I'm gonna flip this camera right now to show you. Ignore the mess in my room. My family's over and they're staying here, but that's besides the point. $15,000 refresh for the social proof. Bang, $15,425.40 in 1 month. And the month's not even over yet. But I just wanted to show you guys this because I feel like most of you guys get desensitized to money on the internet, right? $20,000 here. This college kid is making $100,000 every single day. But most of you guys tend to forget that this is sports betting. This is supposed to be something where you lose money and you just do it for fun. 97% of people haven't even seen $1 in profit, and I'm over here making 15 grand a single month, right? All from data-driven sports betting. Like, it was hard. I'm not gonna sit here and say that it was easy. I had to actually sit here and learn, right, how to use this, how to use math, how to sit here and use these different models, how to, throw away everything that I know and translate it into a smarter approach for sports betting, I guess. But in this video, I'm gonna be showing you guys the exact strategy that I used to make that $15,000 risk-free. It's called arbitrage sports betting. I'm sure you've heard of it before, but in this video, I'm gonna give you an absolute breakdown, detail by detail, everything that I did so that you can follow me, this exact blueprint, and do it yourself. So yeah, let's get straight into it. What's going on, everybody? My name is Choi Cooks, and I'm a professional sports bettor. I mean, you probably saw from the beginning of the video, I just made $15,000 in the month of July. And, I wouldn't say I do, crazy amounts of money or anything, but $15,000 is pretty solid for a guy like myself, I must say. So if you want to learn how to exactly copy my blueprint and do exactly what I did, you need to watch this video because I'm going to break everything down super thoroughly. I don't know how many parts I'm going to break this video into, but I'm going to go over pretty much everything that I know in a complete guide so that you guys can do the exact same thing. But first, we're going to go over what is arbitrage sports betting. Like, what is this model? If you've never heard of it before, if you have, we're still going to go over it, okay? So arbitrage is a financial term, right? It's not a sports betting unique term or anything like that. I didn't make it. Someone else made it. They've been doing this on Wall Street with stocks for a very long time. I just want you guys to imagine it's like you're day trading the stock market, but instead of the stocks, you're day trading sports betting picks. Yes, you are day trading the sports betting market. So it requires two different sports books, and the way this strategy works is instead of just researching a certain pick or looking at matchups or anything like that, like the traditional way of sports betting, we're taking advantage of mispriced lines, right? So every single sports book, they all set their own odds independently, right? There are countless of sports books all across the entire world, and all of them are trying to compete with each other for your business, for your and my business, right? So how these sports books compete with each other is they set their own competitive lines. They update their lines, their odds, they update and move and set these lines and their odds independently, right? They're not communicating with each other, right? They're competing with each other. So with that being said, there are certain times, there are like fragments of times when two sports books between each other will mess up a certain prop, a certain line, or a certain price so far apart, right? They're so far out of sync with each other that you can take advantage in a small fragment of time and capitalize off of this opportunity to make risk-free profit. Whether it's $5 in risk-free profit or $200 in risk-free profit, there are countless opportunities every single day that allow this strategy to be very, very profitable. Now, like I mentioned in other videos, the strategy only works if you are on multiple sports books. Obviously, the minimum required is 2 different books, but obviously the more sports books you get on, you're going to get more opportunities just because there are so many more lines and inconsistencies between each other. So that's what arbitrage sports betting is we're hedging a single bet, right? So for the sake of example, right, let's say we have a money line bet, and one side of the money line on FanDuel is out of sync with the other side of the money line on DraftKings. So we're actually taking both teams to win, but on 2 different books. And because their odds are so out of sync, so mispriced with one another, what we can do is when we take both sides, we're basically hedging the bet to come out with a small return of our original investment. So if we put like $500 on one side of the money line and $300 on the other side of the money line, we can expect to come out with, obviously depending on the size of the discrepancy, we'll come out with like, let's say $30, $40 in risk-free profit. And that's exactly how the strategy works. And this is exactly how we're capitalizing off these sportsbooks' mistakes for our personal gain. So I know that was a bit of a wordy and lengthy explanation, but I promise you guys, it just gets easier and easier to understand from here. Once you understand that we're using 2 different books, right? The whole process is relatively simple. All we're doing, right, like I mentioned, is we're taking advantage of these books and their mispriced odds. But now comes the hard part. How are we even supposed to find these lines or these discrepancies, these mistakes? And that's where OddsJam comes in, right? OddsJam is basically a tool that scrapes data from all of the different books, right? Obviously there's filters where you can set whichever book you have access to. And what you're gonna do here is once you have, OddsJam set up, your filter set up, they scrape data from all of the books and they paste the profitable opportunities on your screen in front of you, literally like this, and they'll send a notification to your phone, to your laptop, whatever, every single time there's a profitable opportunity. Now the thing with these arbitrage bets, right, is these lines move super quick because they're mistakes. They're not supposed to be priced the way they are. So sportsbooks tend to catch on to their mistakes very, very quickly, so obviously people can't take advantage of them like we're doing. But with this tool, it allows us to get in on the opportunity right when it happens. Right? Because with arbitrage betting, every second counts, like I mentioned, because these sports books are trying to not lose money to profitable, sharp sports bettors. So when you are, on OddsJam and you're refreshing this arbitrage tool or you get a notification, what you're going to see is obviously the calculator. And this calculator is going to tell you how much money to put on each side relative to the odds that they're priced at. Now, this calculator is basically a crutch, and I want you guys to know right now, we are going to learn how to arbitrage bet without the use of a calculator because every second matters, and constantly alt-tabbing between the sports books and the calculator isn't a very smart idea. But before we get too ahead of ourselves, now we need to know which sports books to actually use to be profitable with this strategy. And if you haven't watched my last video, I just posted the top sports books to be using for arbitrage sports betting, right? All of the best ones, the differences between them, how they all work, and which ones you can use to your advantage. So if you haven't watched that video yet, pause this video, watch that one, and then come back to this point in the video, and then we can continue. All right, guys, so I'm gonna go on the laptop right now and show you guys what the arbitrage process in a way should look like for you. So we are on OddsJam right now, and as you can see, we have an opportunity for DraftKings and Bet365. So a lot of people usually kind of stop here because they think that they can just, refresh this page and then enter every single bet that comes up to them. But there is a little bit of a process to avoid making mistakes when you're arbitrage betting because mistakes can happen, and that's when you're at risk of losing money. And obviously, you will make mistakes, but with practice and you just doing this for a while, you start to learn that there are some things to look at that will be to your advantage. So for example, right, we have this opportunity here for a 3.63% arbitrage bet. We have the player strikeouts for the Los Angeles Dodgers and the Boston Red Sox. So if you click this calculator here, as you can see, it says to put $180 on the Bet365 side of things and $250 on the DraftKings side of things. Now, how do we know that this is an arbitrage opportunity without looking at OddsJam, without looking at the calculator? Well, when the positive side odd is greater than the negative side odd, we know that that's a mispriced line between one of the two sports books. Obviously, right now, it doesn't really matter which line is mispriced. We are just worried about getting in the bet fast. So, Bet365 has the plus 145 on the over, and DraftKings has the minus 125 on the under. So this calculator tells us to put $180 on Bet365, $250 on DraftKings for the payout of $441 or $450. So the key with arbitrage sports betting is when we have, an opportunity like this, we want to be able to match the payout on both sides. So when we match the payout on both sides, as you can see, our total stake was only $430, but we can have a potential payout of $445, which leaves us with a $15 risk-free profit. If we look in both sides of this opportunity, right, we're coming out with $15 either way. Now you may be saying to yourself, why would I ever want to put down over $400 just to come back with $15? Now, I would rather take a $15 guaranteed profit, literally just someone giving me $15, rather than winning a $100 parlay any day of the week, right? Risk-free is risk-free at the end of the day. Risk-free money is way better than gambled money because gambling creates losers, right? The casino, Vegas, wasn't built off of winners. I'll just tell you that right now. So you need to get rid of the mentality of, oh, we're only making $15 and change it to, oh, we're making $15, right? This will stack up, this will add up. And if you do this multiple times every single day, right, your profits compound. Your profits, they don't, disappear one day, but they just keep on stacking and stacking every single day. And then eventually you can have your bankroll a little bit higher, get your units up a little bit higher, and then you'll start to see bigger profits, bigger returns, right? Faster, faster, and faster. So A trick that I like to use on OddsJam to get these bets in super quick, right, before the lines change, is by using this one-click bet feature right here. If we open, right, click this green button, what it's going to do is it'll open both sportsbooks for us in 2 different tabs. Right, I'm on my laptop right now. I usually do this on my computer or on my phone, and it'll split screen the things. But as you can see, it just opened DraftKings for me, and it opened Bet365. Now, DraftKings, or obviously I took a little bit too long with the explanation, so the bet's gone, it's changed. But what the one-click bet feature does was it's going to open up the sportsbook for you, and it will add the pick to your bet slip automatically. So it completely eliminates the 30 seconds that it would take you to DraftKings.com, look for the game, and then scroll through, look for the bet, and then enter it. All you need to do once you use this one-click bet feature is enter the amount of money that the calculator showed you on both ends. Click submit, and you're good to go. And when I was talking about mistakes earlier, a possible mistake that you could have made was if you were a little bit too slow, you go on DraftKings, you enter the bet, then you go to submit the side on Bet365, and you notice the bet's either removed or the bet's changed, right? The odds are changed to no longer being profitable. Then what do you do? This is why I'm saying every second matters, and you actually need to be able to have, knowledge and research of what you're doing before you actually start trying to use this betting model. Because just because it's risk-free or quote-unquote risk-free doesn't mean it's easy. You actually need to learn and practice in order to be profitable and be good at this strategy. So some tips that I like to give out, right, to avoid these mistakes is to use the one-click bet feature, right? That'll save you 30 seconds to a minute on both ends. And then be able to use this calculator and scan this, right? Memorize the stakes, memorize the odds with just one glance, right? We don't want to be looking back and forth, alt tab. Oh, what was it? Plus 145? Is this plus 145? How much was it? 180? Double check. That's at least 30 seconds right there that could have been saved if you just get a little bit quicker, get a little bit faster, and start practicing. So what I actually did before I started submitting any types of bets was I just did mock arbitrage bets, mock arbitrage sessions. So what I would do is I would literally just refresh this tab right here, and then I would click the calculator, memorize it, and then write it down on a piece of paper. See if I got it correct, right? And then I would just play around with it. Click the one-click bet, see if I could submit it, and then not actually submit it, right? Or I would do like arbitrage bets for $5 just to see if I was fast enough. And once I got super comfortable, that's when I would start putting a lot of money down. All right, guys, and now that we went over what the model is, how the model works, and how you're actually going to do it, now let's go over the stuff that no one tells you about. Sportsbooks, they obviously don't like people that use this strategy because you're guaranteeing that they lose money. So what the sportsbooks will do when they find out is start placing certain restrictions and limits on your account. Now, restrictions and limits doesn't mean you're banned. It doesn't mean the strategy is illegal, right? All it means is that you are going to start to see you can no longer get bets down for more than $50, for more than $100. And that obviously limits, how much volume you can actually get down using this strategy because, like you saw earlier, it does require a decent amount of volume to see any types of profit at all. So, how are we supposed to stay under the radar in a way to kind of prolong these accounts for as long as possible? Because how these limits work is these books, they're not stupid, right? They know every time you're beating the closing line value, every time you're getting value, every time you're playing a mispriced line. So once they determine that you are a profitable bettor, that's when you will start to see certain limits on your account. And I'll make this very clear right now. You cannot avoid limits. If you are profitable, you will be limited. It's just a matter of how long until you're limited. So to stay under the radar, there are a few things that I like to do. The first one is to go into your OddsJam filters and deselect player props for your pre-match arbitrage sessions. So when you're using arbitrage sports betting, there are 2 different types of arbitrage, right? There's pre-match is before the game starts, and then there's live arbitrage, which is during the game. So for pre-game arbitrage, we want to avoid using player props as much as possible due to the limited liquidity. And what liquidity means is basically just the amount of money flowing through that market. So when sportsbooks see that people are placing $500, $600 on a certain player prop, that gets a little bit suspicious, and then they might be reviewing your account and see, this guy is clearly arbitrage sports betting because no one is putting down $600 and, $603.57 on a player prop, right? So step number 1 is to avoid player props on pre-match bets. You can kind of start hammering player props when you're live arbitrage betting because when the props are live, right, the odds fluctuate a lot more. So it's very inefficient for the sports books, right? If you catch a player prop at, a crazy price, the sports book is just like, oh, it's pretty normal because the odds are fluctuating up and down a crazy amount. Player props are generally more inefficient for the sports betting market, so, when you're hammering them during the pre-match, they're going to know if you catch crazy value off of them. So this kind of brings me on to tip number 2 to stay under the radar, right, is to be rounding your bets. Like I mentioned in the last part, the sports books aren't dumb. So if they see somebody betting $603.56, they're clearly going to know that you're using a profitable betting strategy or like a calculator of some sort, which we are. But in this case, what we want to kind of do is round to the nearest whole number. I like to aim up 5, down 5, maybe even to the nearest 10. Right, so if you have like a bet that the calculator is telling you to get down for $254, round it up to 255 or round it down to 250 depending on what the other side is, right? You will miss out on a couple risk-free dollars, but at the end of the day, it's still risk-free money, right? A couple dollars in loss, or not really in a loss, but missing out on a couple dollars will save you, whether it's a couple extra days, couple extra weeks on the sportsbook's account. You will be making a lot more in the long term. All right, guys, and another tip that I'll give you besides, the limits and prolonging your accounts, but is to be tracking every single one of your bets. This is important and crucial if you want to scale your arbitrage betting up to, $1,000 days, right? Hundreds of dollars every single day coming in. You need to be tracking your bets, right? Because if you're only, betting every other day and then sometimes, you're losing because you made a mistake, how are you going to know what's working for you, what strategies are working for you, what practice, modules are working for you and whatnot? Tracking your bets is super important, right? Your win-loss ratio doesn't really matter because in arbitrage, you're going to always be winning one and losing one, but you want to just be tracking your profits. You want to be tracking what sports books you're winning heavily on and what sports books, you're not getting too much volume down on, because this also relates back to prolonging your accounts is you want to be able to have a sports book rotation, right? If you go on a huge win streak on FanDuel and a huge loss streak on DraftKings, but you didn't really get too much volume down on Bovada and Fluff and, some of these other books, maybe kind of lay off on these books for the next week and get more volume down and focus more on these books. Just having a solid book rotation by tracking your bets, figuring out what's working, figuring out what's not working is a crucial, important, really underlooked factor to scaling your arbitrage bets to these crazy profit days. All right, guys, and the last tip that I have for you guys is to manage your bankroll. Be very smart with how you manage and spread across your bankroll. It doesn't really matter how much money you have to start. You can start with any amount. I started with $800 across 3 different books. But if you have, like, let's say $1,000, don't just bet $500 on one side, $400 on the other on one arbitrage bet and call it a day, right? Because like I said, especially if you're just starting out, mistakes can happen. What happens if you get $500 down on one book, $400, and you're trying to get $400 down on the other book, and this bet has moved, this bet has changed, and you lose your $500? Then what? Right? Be very careful, be very smart, have a good bankroll unit management system. If you don't know what a unit is, basically it's 1% of your entire bankroll, and a bankroll is how much money you can allocate to sports betting. I don't care if it's arbitrage betting, I don't care if it's risk-free, what strategy you're using. Your bankroll should be money that you should be okay with losing in the rare chance that all of it disappears. And alright guys, with that being said, that was a very in-depth arbitrage sports betting guide that I used, kind of my blueprint, to make that $15,000 in the month of July. If this video helped you out at all, if you learned anything, make sure to leave a like, comment down below what you want to see next, and subscribe to this channel. For that being said, I go by the name of Troy Cooks. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.